First of all, imagination connoisseurs, hello. Thank you for being here. Let me just say, I do not know why this stream was going on. It wasn't supposed to be going on, so let me apologize for that. But since you guys are all here, I figured I'd just jump on anyway and come on. So everyone, thank you for being here. There's a lot I want to talk about today. And first of all, greetings to all of you, you imagination connoisseurs, you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. I hope that everything is, you can hear me okay and all that. Now, to start, I think it's really important, if you will indulge me for a minute, I want to change it up. Many of you might know what happened today in New Zealand, but Caledon Sound Elliot, who is a frequent guest and member of the Post-Geek Singularity community, sent me a direct message on Twitter today and asked me to read something which I think is incredibly appropriate, and I'd like to read it. But first, I wanted to start by saying what happened today was a self-professed white supremacist went in and shot up a mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand, and killed 48 people that we know of so far. It's still a developing story. He live streamed this. He went to New Zealand for the specific purpose of doing this. This was not somebody who was suffering from mental illness. This was somebody who very deliberately and meticulously planned this act. He was, let us be very clear about what this person did. This is an act of terrorism. It is a man who specifically used politics and race as excuses to target other human beings. It is the most abhorrent of acts. It should not be condoned in any way, shape, or form, and it is horrific. But let's call it what it is: terrorism. Now, I do not want to spend a lot of time discussing the ins and outs of what this man has done. I don't know enough about it. It's not what this channel is about. However, what Caledon sent me, or it might be Celadon, I'm not quite sure of the pronunciation, but his name is Elliot. He wrote something that I believe totally captures the spirit of this channel. It captures my thoughts and feelings. And I love the fact that one of you, the members of the Post-Geek Singularity community, somebody who has been supporting this channel and supporting me almost since the beginning, sent this in, and I'd like to read it, if I may. This is from Elliot. New Zealand. I've never set foot in your country, but I know your spirit intimately through my Kiwi partner. I know your kindness and your compassion, your strength and your bravery, your indomitable will to do what is right in the face of darkness. The growth of this campaign of intolerance and hatred in recent years has cast all of us in shadow. It's not fair that you are the victim of this. Hearing your prime minister speak about your values with such composure and implacability, I am reminded of the good in you I see every day. Do not lose yourself in the chaos. Stand strong and stand together. You will rise above this and be a beacon to the rest of the world, affirming that hatred has no place. We hear you. We are here for you. We love you. I tell you, I got a little choked up reading that. As many of you know, I lived in New Zealand on and off from 2001 through 2004 for 3 years on and off, working on both The Lord of the Rings and The Chronicles of Narnia. I was lucky to travel all over the North and South Islands of New Zealand. I've lived in Auckland. I've lived in Wellington. I've lived in Oamaru, and we have lived in Christchurch, me and my team. And having been to Christchurch, it is an astonishingly lovely place. And I just, after they already suffered the tragedy of the earthquake back in 2011, they're still building themselves out of, to have a tragedy like this befall New Zealand, which, by the way, is one of the most beautiful countries I've ever been in. The people are delightful. There's nothing about New Zealand that I don't love. To go there is to find its magic. And I can't imagine what the people of New Zealand are feeling today. And let's be clear, I have in the past been critical of forces of Islamic fundamentalism. And I don't, again, I'm not going to make this a political screed, but it doesn't matter what kind of people we are. Nobody deserves this. Our political differences, our ideological differences aside, no human being deserves to be gunned down at a place of worship. We don't deserve to be gunned down at all. But specifically, whatever your religious preferences are, this was at a mosque. This was at a place of worship. This is at a place where people should feel safe to worship the gods they believe in and practice their beliefs in a safe environment. There is nothing that excuses this. This was not an act of mental illness. This was a deliberately planned and executed act, and it should be. We should. Every authority that is granted to humanity should condemn this act. It is terrorism, and it is not the future that we should have for ourselves. But anyway, it's very upsetting. And I just wanted to say that, and I can't imagine what the people of New Zealand are feeling today. My heart goes out to them. You know, it's funny. You live in California. When I used to be a big skier, I don't ski as much as I used to. But when you'd go up, and I would go to Mammoth a lot, all the people working at Mammoth in the winter are Aussies and Kiwis because it's their summer. And, you know, it always reminded me when I would go skiing in Mammoth, I loved meeting people from New Zealand and Australia, two places that other than Seattle and other than California and Los Angeles, the places I've lived longest in the world for me were both New Zealand and Australia. And I love New Zealanders and Australians. They're some of the greatest people in the world. They're the loveliest people you'll ever meet. And this is just for my New Zealand friends out there. If I had a Monteith's Black, I would hoist it and drink to the safety of everyone down there. But anyway, that aside, I would like to get back to the Post-Geek Singularity and what this channel is all about, which is positivity and inclusion, the exact opposite. Look, the sooner we get over our racial differences, the better off we're going to be. Look, we're all supposed to, the Earth is supposed to be, we're a genetic smorgasbord. We should be concentrating on intermixing everybody and getting our genetic stock as high as it can be so we can travel out into the stars. So when we meet another alien race, humanity has already been supercharged by us intermingling. And listen, the most beautiful human beings are those of mixed race anyway, and we need to come to grips with that because that's what our destiny is as we push out to the stars. Nobody cares as we go into the universe what country you're from or what color you are. They're going to care about what planet you're from and what species you're from. And as soon as we get over our petty differences, we're going to be better for it, and we're going to be stronger and probably better human beings. So bring on all of the intermixing, and we got to get rid of these boundaries, and we've got to get rid of our small-mindedness and start thinking about joining the universal community, or we might as well just throw in the towel and give it up. But I don't want to do that, and I don't believe in that. So anyway, I want to read a few letters that I've received, because once again, the letters that I've received from people. But before I do that, what is the great news that just dropped? News that I cannot believe. News that had not dropped when we started John Campia's show today. James Gunn has been rehired to direct Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Now, first of all, this is a stunning development for a corporation. We've got both. It's not just Marvel Studios. It's also Disney. And for them to admit, to capitulate, I don't even think they're capitulating necessarily. They made a mistake. They pulled the trigger too soon. They are standing up for somebody that has done great work for them. This, in my mind, is how America should do business with people. People do good business and they're rewarded for it. And when a corporation makes a mistake, rather than cover up that mistake, they very publicly admit by rehiring somebody that should never have been fired in the first place. Forget that he's a geek hero, and forget that I know him personally. I work with a film on a film that he wrote called The Specials, where he actually played Minute Man. This is fantastic news. Congratulations to James Gunn. He deserved to be rehired. So much of where the Marvel Cinematic Universe has gone, the Guardians of the Galaxy has now become crux of that. Nebula, Gamora. It's fantastic. So James Gunn is back as director of Guardians of the Galaxy. How that will affect Suicide Squad, I don't know. It depends how they want to fast track Guardians. Maybe they don't, but it's great that he got brought back. And to me, he's a force for good in the world, as fandom should be. And now that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, but I'll get into it. I'm going to read these few letters first, if I may, from readers, and then we're going to talk about the topic at hand. This comes from Chris Cooling. Hey, Rob. I've been enjoying your YouTube channel, and I feel we are kind of geek brothers, even if I don't agree with you on all points or topics you speak on. But that's fine, since mature people can disagree on social political issues and still be civil and even like each other. I became aware of you after discovering the film Free Enterprise, which I feel personally spoke to my extreme nerddom. I had just discovered Laserdiscs in 1996, and of course, you know what happened the following year. I loved the text commentary on the first DVD and wish more movies did this. For those of you who don't know, my film Free Enterprise was one of the last Laserdiscs manufactured in 1999. And today, it's March 15th, the Ides of March. And go look up the video for No Tears for Caesar from the movie Free Enterprise, where Shatner raps Friends, Romans, Countrymen from Julius Caesar. To anyone that scoffs at the idea of that our content can be taken away, I remind you of Michael Campfield, who in 1997 had police show up at his house to demand he hand over the movie he had rented from Blockbuster and threaten him with prosecution for having rented it. If any of your viewers are unfamiliar with this case, I recommend reading up on the censorship issue regarding the relatively obscure foreign film The Tin Drum. That was directed actually by Volker Schlondorf, and it's a World War II themed film. It's a great movie, by the way. The police illegally obtained his name and address from a Blockbuster store after a local judge decided the film was obscene. By the way, Chris includes a link here. I'm going to put that in the description to this chat, so it'll be there after I'm done. Say what you will about Blockbuster, but we had additional training on the Video Privacy Protection Act after this happened, and I personally refused to disclose rental histories of customers to local church leaders, informing them that what they were asking was against federal law. Now, we live in a post-video store age where you can no longer go to the neighborhood video store and rent 1986's Rad or 1984's Electric Dreams, although that recently came out on Blu-ray in the UK. You're fortunate if you can find many movies on DVD at all and released in your region. In this age of everything just being on whatever streaming service where licenses come and go monthly, any piece of content can just disappear at the first of the month. That's if it exists on the streaming service to begin with, as tens of thousands of movies never even made it to DVD, much less a streaming service. Keep buying discs. This doesn't even touch on the fact that hundreds of TV shows we used to watch have simply disappeared into time, never receiving any kind of video release or ever seen again. And I'm talking about stuff from the late 80s. The Popcorn Kid, Aaron's Way, Otherworld, starring Jonathan Banks, Whiz Kids, Beans Baxter, Aftermash, The Highwayman, and the list goes on. There are not even complete video recordings that you can find for all of these. Go back to the 70s and some shows seem totally lost, especially the pre-VCR years. This is one reason I started my Forgotten TV podcast, to talk about a lot of this stuff that has been forgotten. Anyway, keep up the good work and I'll keep watching. Chris Cooling. Look up Forgotten TV. I wasn't aware of his podcast, but I'm sure it's great. I really like this. It was a great follow-up letter to what we were talking about physical media the other day, and a really thoughtful response. And thank you for that, because our entire cultural legacy is in danger of going away. The cinematic legacy that we have, both television. I mean, there is the Museum of Television, but These things, if they're not monetized and they're not put up, they're going to fall away into the sands of history. And I think it's important we preserve them. Now, my last letter is from not Gilbert. I'm sure Gilbert would like to read the last letter, but he's not here. He's not going to read it. You're just going to have to hear him. Somebody, by the way, somebody wrote in and said that they didn't like Gilbert's barking on these live streams. And to that, I say, he's part of the show, pal. But I appreciate it. I try and keep Gilbert's barking to a minimum. Right, buddy? Yeah, dude. Yeah. See, but sometimes people come and go, and there's nothing I can do. So here's another letter that I wanted to read. See, Gilbert's mad that somebody said that he couldn't bark on camera. Anyway, this comes from Terry Flynn. Terry Flynn sent this to me. This was an email that came in on my website, the Burnettwork, which, by the way, if you want to write me, the Burnettwork.net, my website is the best place to do it because sometimes I miss Twitter or Facebook or things like that. But my website's the best place to find me, or write me a direct email at rmburnett1701@gmail.com. Anyway, this comes from Terry Flynn. Terry writes, "Dear Rob, thought I'd make a few points after watching an entire video of yours live, which I loved. Thank you for that. Firstly, your discussion of difficulties of separating the artist from their art was very honest. Us old farts remember that this issue goes back way before the internet age, and of course, one early discussion concerned Wagner, whose music was virtually the theme tune to Nazi Germany, and whose personal views are deeply dodgy. Secondly, I've cut my subscriptions to a bunch of geek nerd YouTubers in favor of yours. I dislike doing this, since their behind-the-scenes production and legal insights are important. However, I feel that quite a few of these people now apparently feel the need to be first with videos on things like daily box office returns, which are at best highly misleading, and worst, promoting a discussion on par with that used by 8-year-old kids in the schoolyard. I'm really pleased that the angry, rude people on both sides of the debates have not appeared in comments to your videos, and I hope it stays that way. Thirdly, and following on from elements of this debate concerning representation of groups in society, as a gay man, I, echoing comments you have made, want these movies to be centered on believable characters. I want them to be written and edited realistically. I find myself watching Discovery out of habit rather than loyalty, and I fast forward through much of the Culber-Stamets stuff. It just doesn't ring true, and it feels written by committee. On the other hand, the Expanse novels do it right, and on TV, Brooklyn Nine-Nine does it right. In fact, sly jokes about the nature of homophobics are slipped in so well. Finally, I caught a bit of your contribution to another channel to the issue of the death of the Blu-ray. Like you, I will never give up physical copies of my media. But like you, I recognize that higher capacity storage is now the norm. But the key issue concerns not Blu-ray per se, but the ownership versus borrowing model. When you realize how easily your treasured media might be inaccessible via streaming for various reasons, I think having physical copies, although unfashionable, is imperative. Thanks for your discussions and keep up the good work, Terry. We'll try and be around for the next vid so I can give some cash, as Patreon only seems to support recurring payments. Listen, Terry, thank you very much for that thoughtful letter. And again, I appreciate these two letters sort of dovetailing. And it also reminded me of the larger issues facing fandom. You know, I've been getting a lot of people talking to me about how they've turned to my channel because of the positivity that I try and bring to the debate. And I do appreciate that, because that is really where I come from as a fan. I mean, my fandom is lifelong, and it runs deep. And I come from a place that I would always seek out fellow fans to share our enthusiasm. It was never something to me to get in acrimonious debates with people. Look, I love Starship Smackdown, the panel we always finish the Comic-Con with, San Diego Comic-Con. It was born out of those discussions we would have at Lola's, you know, long nights of drinking, really discussing Would the Battlestar Galactica have a chance against the Starship Enterprise? We would discuss the physics of the universe, whether snub fighters were going to be even able to penetrate the Enterprise shields. And all of these debates were always done with our tongues firmly in cheeks and our smiles getting ever broader on our faces. All of this stuff, first of all, it's all flights of fantasy. It's all about imagination. It's all about those things that we spend our time thinking way too much about. And it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be something that makes your life a better place to be. And this acrimony that's permeated not just the rest of society, has resulted in what happened in New Zealand today. This toxicity that is being brought to fan circles, it really baffles me, and it's something that I don't. Not only do I not condone it, I don't understand it. I really don't. I mean, here's the thing: Gilbert doesn't understand it either. The act of trying to make something like a film, there are much easier ways. It's kind of like being a toy investor. I never understood. People would say to me, oh, "You open your toys? Sometimes you don't keep the boxes." I get that. But I don't buy toys as an investment opportunity. If I was going to be an investor, I would buy stocks and bonds and invest in real estate. While I understand if you're going to spend $250 on a Hot Toys figure, keep the box. They're very collector friendly, and they're always great on the resale market. You can probably unload them easily. So it makes sense that when you buy a Hot Toys figure, you do, in fact, keep the box. Plus, they come with lots of accessories, and where else are you going to keep them but the box, so you always know where things are. But really, I mean, collecting toys, as much as I like it, as much as I like my robot models or 2001 models or Soul of Chogokin or Gundam or Star Wars or Star Trek, whatever it is, the reason that I buy these things is just because I like them. I don't expect other people to necessarily like them. Gilbert, I think my dog, hold on one second. Gilbert, did you go into the... Okay, no, I think I'm good. He goes into the bathroom and he steals my shoes, and he'll take them and they last maybe 30 seconds outside. Just want to make sure he didn't do that. But you should buy these things because you like them. That's it. That's the only reason that you should. I've loved spaceship models since I was a little kid. I really want to get the new Mobius EVA pod, the 1/8 scale EVA pod from 2001, and the secondary market brass etched secondary market kits and the lighting kits. And I really want it. I've wanted this kit my whole life. Why? I don't know. Like, why does anybody want any of these things? Why do I love spaceships? Because when I hold them in my hand, my imagination goes crazy. That's about it. So this channel is all about that. It's all about all of you here, everybody part of the Post-Geek Singularity community. I would imagine you're here because we're here to literally have fun. Like, all of this stuff is it's, first of all, it's imagination is a luxury item in the first place. All humanity has it, but to really use it well, that's a luxury item. Imagination is a luxury item. And being an imagination connoisseur, you get to be an imagination connoisseur and you don't even have to have any money. You can go to the library and read the great works of literature. All this stuff is all around us, being beamed into our house. It's like Tom Noonan in Heat, when he's getting all the information Robert De Niro needs to pull off the heist. He's like, this information, it's all around us. You just have to grab it. In that conversation, I know it's a deep cut, but it happens in the movie Heat. We live in this world where fandom should be a source of ultimately positivity amongst everybody, because it's all about using our imagination. It's all about loving movies and comics and television shows and novels. And these are all products of the human imagination. People just dream this stuff up and then they implement it. They make it. They create it. And all the things we love, even Pearl here will tell you that she didn't exist until people like Dan O'Bannon and Ridley Scott and Ronald Shuzette, David Giler made it possible for Pearl here and H.R. Giger to dream this nightmarish thing up. It's pretty great. And so the baseline of our fan community should be one of joy. It should be one of happiness. It should be one of fun. And I don't understand why it isn't anymore, and why we have these kinds of, why are we debating? Like, ultimately, who cares what the box office is of a movie? It doesn't affect you or me. I mean, I follow it because I'm in the business of Hollywood, and I utilize that information to help me with current projects. But ultimately, if you're not in the business, how much money a movie makes has no bearing on your life at all. All you care about is whether the movie is good or not. I mean, I will defend John Carter of Mars because I love John Carter of Mars. I love the books growing up. I love The Princess of Mars. I love Burroughs Barsoom books, I mean, and we debate, oh, that movie sucked. No, a lot of thousands of people put their time and effort, and they gave it their best shot to make John Carter a great movie. So our fandom should literally be the one place in our lives where we should find refuge in the joy of the sharing of the products of human imagination. I mean, that's why I say imagination connoisseurs. That's why I say here the Post-Geek Singularity. That's why I always say everybody you know or everybody you meet has a story to tell you haven't heard. You never know when you're going to get a good story or where it's going to come from. So we have to keep fandom as a force for good in the world. It should be a force for inclusion. And by the way, there's genre stories from all over the world. Like, it's not just America or Europe or Asia. I mean, there's a whole world of crazy East Indian movies, Bollywood cinema. Like, look up the movie Robot, and now there's a sequel. There's stuff from all over the world. Delve into one day, look up like Eastern European or Eastern Bloc science fiction films that you've never heard of. I mean, it'll lead you down a rabbit hole, and you'll be like, man, I want to see that. The guy that directed Possession, I can't pronounce his name, Zuluewski. It's a Polish name. He made one of the great science fiction films ever made that never got finished. And he did it in Poland with government money. They didn't let him finish it. Where's that movie? I mean, the entire world has. I mean, one of the great modern science fiction writers is an African American woman who sadly passed away, named Octavia Butler. You might not identify with a Black woman who writes science fiction, but I guarantee you she's written some incredible science fiction that you should go read. I know all kinds of science fiction writers and all kinds of filmmakers of every shape, size, color, and creed. And, the diversity of their backgrounds, it's not about pushing a political agenda on you. I mean, when they're sharing their experiences, if they grew up different than you, their perspective is going to be different than yours. And I think it's really, really, really important that this perspective is shared and honored, and we should revel in our times, not unlike Roy Batty did. And I think, we live in this world now where we have all these wondrous communications technologies and things that we can share with one another, and yet we're all angry at each other all the time, and I don't understand why. Because look, there's nothing better than going to a place like the San Diego Comic-Con, or next month on April 13th, I'm appearing at a convention, a day-long convention in Wenatchee, Washington, in Washington State, in Wenatchee. It's on April 13th. I've never been there, but why I'm going to that convention? Because my next door neighbor, actually my neighbor across the street, family across the street, literally across the street, he found this channel and he saw my Robservations with Greg Smith, the first episode. And Greg Smith is right now, if you go to the Emerald City Comic-Con in Seattle, you can see Priscilla, Queen of the Glacier, his brand new full-scale probe droid that he built. And you can see his 1-to-1 scale land speeder. They also have a Tauntaun. They also have snow troopers. The photographic displays they put up there. Go check those out at the Emerald City Comic-Con. They're awesome. But I will be in Wenatchee on the 13th of April at this convention. And come say hello, come visit me. And that's what it's all about. But also, as my two letters talked about, they did talk about the importance of preserving what it is that you like. If you like physical media and you like books and the things that we all collect, but what we're talking about here is not necessarily toys or collectibles, but things like our media, whether it's physical media, whether it's novels, whether it's the actual. Oh, Gilbert's excited about that too, right, buddy? But I think it's really important that these things do get preserved. I mean, already the studios don't feel that there's any value in their catalog anymore. Other companies are whether it's Indicator out of the UK, whether it's Shout Factory, whether it's Arrow, whether it's Kino Lorber. I mean, the people that are Twilight Time. It's the people that are putting these out are putting out material that the studios aren't going to themselves put out, and we're losing our cultural heritage on a daily basis. And the point about the old TV shows is absolutely true. How many shows? When was the last time you watched or found The Fantastic Journey, which was a wacky science fiction show that starred Roddy McDowall and Ike Eisenman from Star Trek II and Escape from Witch Mountain fame, and Jared Martin as Varian? It lasted like 8 episodes. I mean, Otherworld, Jonathan Banks basically played a Nazi in an alternate Earth. When was the last time you watched that? These things are disappearing, and we should be preserving them all because they can be stored on streaming mediums or things like that. So I think what everybody's saying and what people are being mindful of is, and I think the point is well taken. If everything becomes digitized, it can be changed at someone's whim. It can be deleted at someone's, whoever the winning side is. They can come. One of the themes of science fiction that never goes away is the Orwellian fantasy, whether it's Fahrenheit 451, whether it's Brave New World in 1984, whether it's The Man in the High Castle, whatever it is. Part of science fiction has always been the threat of a dystopian civilization eliminating the idea of free thought. And I think that eventually, as every generation grows and moves on, our rich entertainment past becomes less and less valuable. And I think that that's a real threat in our society today. Not as much of a threat as human beings not respecting the sanctity of the life of other human beings or the sovereignty of the individual. But anyway, these are just things I was thinking about today. I'm going to go and start answering questions. I know that I might have missed. There was a lot of super chats that came in that I missed because this was I didn't even know. I don't know why it was streaming before I came on, but I will try and get to. If I've missed super chats, just tell me if they went away. Magic K says James Gunn strikes back. Disney just rehired him for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Long live Guardians of the Galaxy. The king is back to his rightful place. The king should never have been deposed. But Magic K, I'm as excited as you are. I think James Gunn stands as a shining beacon of a success story. He worked for Troma Films, Tromeo and Juliet. I worked with him on The Specials, which is a low-budget superhero movie with a great cast that was directed by Craig Mazin, who wrote the Hangover movies. He's a great guy. James Gunn wrote a novel, a really dark novel, and called The Toy Collector, believe it or not. And anyone who delves into his past, and if you know anything about James Gunn, he has a very, very dark sense of humor. And outrage culture, what he was pilloried for was ridiculous. And by the way, he's never hidden or tried to hide who he is. He's always been out there, and who James Gunn is who you get. And it's great to see him back in the saddle for Guardians. Hey, Rob. Working and Deadline reports that James Gunn is back. Apparently, everybody's excited about this, as I am, which is terrific. I think it's great that he is back, and let's just all give a golf clap or a big round of applause that he is back. Troll Hunter says, thanks for your support, sir. I find it telling that Black Panther and Captain Marvel resulted in the most backlash. It's also amazing to me that Brie is told to play a hardened soldier and people flip out. She didn't smile. She should have wore a sundress and banged a dude. Listen, I mean, here's what I will say about all of this. And I'm going to say this because I've been part of this community for a long time. There is a contingent, and I had to deal with this my whole life, mostly as I got older, that the Get a Life sketch on Saturday Night Live is not without truth. When Shatner says, move out of your parents' garage. Have you ever kissed a girl? There is a contingent, and I understand this wasn't my case growing up, but because I've had a lot of friends growing up who were huge fans, I understand where they're coming from. Life is hard. And when you're growing up, when you're an adolescent, elementary school, junior high, high school, middle school, wherever you're at, it's hard. And what science fiction, fantasy, and horror and fandom provides is sometimes a replacement to what you're not getting in the real world. The fantasy worlds that you get to inhabit do not reject you. You do not get picked last for the team. If you are socially awkward and shy, when you pick up a book, you can be the warrior you dreamed yourself to be. Fandom has always had a contingent of people that I would say are, let's just say, less self-actualized than others. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I feel that when you're butting up against issues of human relationships, meaning when Brie Larson, the whole thing about Gamergate, this idea that, the girls are encroaching on our space because we're the guy gamers. I get where that comes from. I mean, I do understand. I don't think it's helpful. And I've always been of the opinion, I've always liked girls, ever since I was a little kid. And I in my mind, I do that because I loved Captain Kirk, and Captain Kirk loved girls, and I wanted to be like him. So, and I've always loved the world at large. I was always, let's go out there and have an adventure. Let's go someplace and meet people we haven't met. And I was always the guy organizing my friends. Hey, let's go do this. Let's go out there. And that's what genre fiction taught me to do. Is I want to go out and live my life. I want to go out and have these adventures. I didn't want to sit at home. I didn't want to, and I didn't want to have an insular life. I wanted to meet as many people as I could. I wanted to go forth and get a passport and travel and take day trips and all that. But I understand a big contingent of fandom doesn't want to do that. And if you're not comfortable in yourself and what you like in the world, you can get threatened by these things. You get threatened by anybody who's going to encroach. And I think that's the problem with all of the rhetoric and the hatred that we see today, is everyone is afraid of what they have, or their slice of the pie being taken away from them. And that is a very real fear. It is a very understandable fear. It's a very primal fear. It goes all the way back. Look, 2001. What happens in 2001? You've got these apes. They've got their watering hole. They're living sort of this bucolic life. And what happens? These guys who are armed with bones, that have figured out that bones can be used as tools, basically come and take over their water hole. I mean, even back in the day when primordial man, all they had was water and there was the monolith, they were still afraid. People are still trying to come take their shit. And that is I understand. But the one thing that fandom has going for it, for the most part, is there's a common ground of things that we love. And that shouldn't go away. I mean, if we all love one thing, let's get into the negotiations by starting to remember at first, what is it we love about these things? Whether you like Disney Star Wars or not, whether you like the prequels or not. If you love Star Wars, and who doesn't, then we all have a common ground to start talking. And this idea that I don't understand, like, why in the MCU has brought nothing but joy to people for the most part. And why would you root against it? It's so funny that Brie Larson, all she ever wanted to do was help out, like, getting more voices to see her movie and to talk about it and write about it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. She wasn't saying that the other people that were already doing these things couldn't. She just wanted to see more diversity, and we need that. So anyway, and fandom, we should be the ground zero of inclusion. We really should be, because if you're a fan of science fiction, fantasy, and horror, you gotta be inclusive, or humanity will die out. We'll either be destroyed by Cthulhu, or invading rampaging aliens, or the undead, or witches, or who knows. But what is the one lesson we can take away from all science fiction, fantasy, and horror, all genre literature? If we don't stand together, we're lost. I mean, right? MW77 says, have you seen Sword of Doom, a 1966 Japanese film? I have seen Sword of Doom, and I do not own it. However, I need to get it. Criterion put it out, didn't they? It's a great film. I'm a huge samurai movie fan. Anything with samurais or ronins. Look, I love Lone Wolf and Cub. I love the original Lone Wolf and Cub movies. But if you haven't seen Shogun Assassin, and if you look, I love, whether it's Throne of Blood or Ron or Seven Samurai. I love the Kurosawa movies, the Zatoichi movies, The Blind Swordsman. Criterion put out that box set. And then Bill Hunt was very happy when they finally released the last Zatoichi movie that was not in that box set. But yes, I'm a big fan of those movies. David Cabrera says, R&B, thanks for keeping awake through work. Thanks for keeping me awake through work. Hopefully my boss is not on this chat. Keep up the good work. I noticed, you guys, that I might have missed. Chris Miller says, hello, R&B. Thank you, Chris. And Willow Yang is here. Willow Yang says, are you satisfied with how Hannibal concluded? Wow, Willow, this is a change of pace. Or would you like to have had the series to continue? I'm not a horror fan, but the show is fantastic. Okay, what Willow is talking about is Brian Fuller's television adaptation of the Thomas Harris novels Red Dragon. Well, they don't have the rights to Silence of the Lambs, but Red Dragon, Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal, and Hannibal Rising. There are 4 Hannibal Lecter novels, and they have been adapted numerous times. We had Manhunter, Michael Mann's Manhunter from 86, might have been 87. We had obviously Silence of the Lambs. We had Hannibal. Then we had Red Dragon, which was a remake, not a remake, but a new adaptation of the first book, Red Dragon, that was made as Manhunter. That was directed by Brett Ratner and starred Edward Norton, and it starred Ralph Fiennes as Francis Dollarhide, the Tooth Fairy. And then we had Hannibal Rising, which the less said was better. But then Brian Fuller made Hannibal that ran 3 seasons, which I think in my mind is not only one of the most beautiful television shows ever, it's also one of the greatest horror television shows ever. And was I satisfied with how it ended? No. I don't want to talk about what actually happened. It's a spoiler alert because it could have gone further, and it had a sort of a Sherlock Holmes ending. I'll say that. If you know your Sherlock Holmes, it kind of had a Sherlock Holmes ending. But no, I would like to have seen the show go on. I think Hannibal is one of the most extraordinary achievements in I call it fantasy genre television. Just genre to me. When I hear the word genre, I know there's a lot of different genres, but I've always thought of what I love, whether it's science fiction, fantasy, horror, westerns, crime thrillers, noir, whatever. They're just different genres, blaxploitation. But for me, when I also say genre, it steps in as a term. It's all encompassing, meaning science fiction, fantasy, and horror. So I do think that Hannibal is one of the greatest achievements in horror television ever. It's incredible, and the acting, Mads Mikkelsen and Hugh Dancy, it's just it's so incredible. And in the series, they go back and they retell the story of Red Dragon. They retell the story of Hannibal. They retell the story of Hannibal Rising, and they have very different ways of doing it. They didn't have the rights to the book Silence of the Lambs, but the way they retell all of the Lecter mythology taken out of all the books is fascinating and really, really great stuff. Really enjoyed it, and I cannot recommend the Hannibal series enough. It's really amazing, and if you guys haven't seen those books, incredible. Or haven't seen those books, haven't read those books, which I think you should. Everybody should, because they are great. Now, I think I missed some super chats, so if you just write in and say you had sent me them, because I wasn't on this my screen was going on and I wasn't paying any attention, so I apologize for that, for missing something. So yeah, just hit me back. Let's see. Angry Tom 316 says, wow, did James Gunn news is incredible. He's directing Suicide Squad, and now he's directing again Guardians of the Galaxy. We live in an incredible world today. Yeah, I always say that, and it's kind of like if you ever saw the movie Megaforce, Hal Needham's 1982 movie starring Barry Bostwick. The good guys always win, even in the 80s. Well, maybe we can start seeing more of the good guys winning, even in the, what is this, the teens? I don't know what our era is going to be called. Learning Disabled Spock says, everything in science fiction and genre shares one aspect, that no one thinks the same, but we all need to work together. I agree with you. I mean, all the things we like is all the things we love. And you know what's funny? Some of the great genre fiction shows us that when people aren't willing to work together, that when they want to impose their views upon us, that's when we fall. Like, look at I love like the religious zealot in The Mist, Stephen King's The Mist. You know, she starts. Now, I'm not putting down religion, but when you start trying to impose your religious beliefs on other people that have differing beliefs than yours, that's not productive to the group banding together. Like, if you're in a survival situation your sexuality, your race, your religious disposition is not going to help you survive. You have to deal with the task at hand. And I think that, we live in a time where what happened in New Zealand is a purely hateful act. And I think we can be consumed by our hatred of other people, when really our hatred of other people is not going to help in the long run. We have much more difficult, much more nuanced problems that we need to face together, and hate just gets in the way of that. It's shocking to me. Mossy G said Marvel saw with the alt-right hate that it didn't affect the bottom line for Captain Marvel, making it safe to bring Gunn back at no risk. That's probably true. I mean, what's really interesting is if you think about all of the coordinated campaign to take down James Gunn, or to take down anybody. I mean, imagine if the effort that they're doing to take down other people that really they have nothing to do with, nothing at all to do with, could be turned around to do something more productive. I mean, it seems like a silly idea, but if that's what you want to do, if you want to spend your energies not creating something and taking down other people that are creating something, I just don't know what you're hoping to achieve with that. Once they're taken down, do you just sit back and twirl your mustache for the rest of your days? I mean, imagine what more you can do. Like I've said to everybody, work begets work. If you make something, who knows where that's going to take you? You have no idea. You could wind up anywhere. But if you're not making something, taking another person down doesn't make you any better or any worse. It doesn't. It leaves you actually with no Guardians of the Galaxy 3. So I've just never understood that. Victor Acosta says, Rob, considering the news today, could this open the doors for DC to try and actively recruit more directors from the MCU? Would Disney be okay with this? Would love to hear your thoughts. Well, here's the thing. The studios, if you think about it, they only make a certain number of movies per year. Let's say they make 10 or 15. That's it. They need people that know how many people on the planet Earth can direct $150 million or a $250 million franchise film. Not many. And you need to know how to juggle. When you're directing a movie, you are asked 10,000 questions a day by people from all departments. And you have to know something about all of those departments. You have to know how to relate to people. You have to know how to be political. Have to convey your ideas, and you have to be clear in what you're thinking. So everybody that's working for you can make it all happen. And there aren't many people that work in Hollywood that can work at that level. And so I think the sharing of talent is going to be ultimately inevitable. We don't work in a studio system now where we used to have talent that would get locked down by the studio, and they would just work on movie after movie after movie. And I think, rightfully so now, you want different voices coming in and changing things up. And I think at the time, look, Warner Brothers, Disney gave up James Gunn, and Warner Brothers swooped in and took him over. And they should have, because James Gunn proved himself, and he proved himself a great commodity. Everyone working with him loved him. He made $1.5 billion for the studio. He wasn't accused of, if anything, he was accused of having really poor taste. But, as I've said before, I think a lot of people at my own college, what happened at the Evergreen State College back in 2017, and seeing how those kids reacted, I found it really disgusting. But it's those people, like if I were to go to Evergreen and show a double feature of Blazing Saddles and A Clockwork Orange, I would be protested and people would be screaming at me, running me off campus. How can you condone this kind of entertainment? I'm like, I don't know, because it's awesome. Perhaps they should look inward and find out, what about this entertainment? Just because it offends your sensibilities doesn't mean it's bad entertainment or bad art. I mean, that's what art's supposed to do. It's supposed to challenge. Look, it's not going to hurt you. Bad ideas exist, but they can be fought with good ideas, and bad ideas will always lose out. I mean, that's why I've never understood, to be honest, I've never understood neo-Nazism. I mean, they lost, man. You had your shot. The Aryan race had its shot. They lost. They were beaten back and defeated by cooler heads. because their ideas were bad. We live on a planet that has all different kinds of people. And unless we learn to live together, what are you going to do about it? They're here. They're here. Are you going to start exterminating people? I mean, I'd much rather be building something with all the diverse people I meet. Think about it this way. Here's how everybody should think about the world. We all like a good meal, right? Everybody around the world cooks good food. We should all just think about when you meet somebody that looks different than you, maybe is a different color from a different country, whatever it is, think about the food they could make that you'd probably like to eat that you don't know about. We should adopt not meals on wheels, but some kind of a meal program where we share. Our baseline is taking all the people that we don't know or all the people that we fear, and we should have like a cook-off and see what they can make and how we can all sit down and share a meal and realize, we're not so different after all. I don't know if that's very practical, but I think it could work. That's the one thing that always struck me as I travel around the world and living in different places, that there's people that, one, they love to party no matter where you go. You always find people that love to party. And two, there's people that love to make good food. Those are the universal constants. And once you realize that, it doesn't matter where you are. You could be in a jungle or on the beach in Costa Rica, or you could be in Sofia, Bulgaria. Man, I was in Sofia, Bulgaria. I was surprised at how hard those people partied. And they dance. There's no irony there. Nobody cares. It doesn't matter if you're a bad dancer or not. Everybody dances. Everybody parties. By the end of the night, everyone is drenched with sweat, liquored up, smiles on their faces, and it's great. And I wouldn't have thought that. And Victor Acosta says, what happened in New Zealand is a disgrace, and the fact that one of these morons was inspired by the BS that has been going on lately in the USA is even more disgraceful. Food for thought. Yeah, it is. What's going on in this country and the rhetoric. I mean, I'll say it. The rhetoric that we've been hearing from Donald Trump has been very unpresidential and I think anti-American. Now, this is not because I'm necessarily a Democrat or a Republican, but if somebody's leading a country that is made up of many different kinds of people, everything from the indigenous population that used to live here that was decimated when Europeans came over to everybody that now lives here, everybody that lives in America. Whether we've voted a Republican or Democratic leaders, those leaders have an obligation to lead the country as a whole. They need to lead all of the country. To disparage one political party over another once you've taken the office of the presidency, to disparage, and all presidents have done it to one degree or another, but I think it's getting counterproductive, and to feed into our differences is wrong-headed and is not going to ever win out. To play off people's fears, to play off, it just doesn't help us. What we need to do is figure out how do we all come together, and I'm not talking about in a kumbaya way. I'm talking about in a way that's going to help us all move forward, because we're all here. We're here. We're not going away. So why not figure out a way to take all the energy that exists here and apply it to something that's going to be conducive and helpful for all? I just don't understand why we aren't doing that. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Dale M says, what the fuck? Gilbert is the co-host. Yes, he is. Koba says, Gilbert's barking makes the show more fun. And you know what's funny about, I don't even know where Gilbert learned to howl like a hound dog, because he howls and it's amazing. Spartan Jeremy says, Midnight's Edge After Dark. Mr. Connors, as you may have noticed, I've been working on my own sci-fi project. I was wondering if it might be possible to name a starship after you as well. That's an interesting question. I don't know that was directed at me, but yes. Matt Limpicki says, I love watching Robert Meyer Burnett. Well, thank you. Olenti says, Gilbert just barked, kiss my ass. Jack Richard says, damn, you really take that live stream seriously. You got the microphone set and everything. You're a real G. Faux show. Well, if you can't talk on the internet technically well, I don't like that. And you know what? As a filmmaker, you gotta use your I think you gotta use your equipment and make it as technically proficient as possible. Koba says, I still have Star Wars on VHS because it's the only way to watch the original versions. It's true. Well, on Laserdisc too, though. I have the original versions. Silent Thriller says, wouldn't a download to a hard drive be a physical copy? You know what? I don't know. While it is physical, you can't hold a file in your hand. You know, I mean, even though essentially a Blu-ray is a file, you can't erase a Blu-ray unless you stick it in a microwave oven, and then it'll go bzzz. By the way, don't ever try it. Just take my word for it. If you want to destroy a DVD or a Blu-ray or a 4K disc, put it in a microwave. It's kind of fun to watch it go whoosh, but it's gone. It's gone. Dale M says, I'm jealous, Koba. I would love the original version. Sadly, my kids have never saw those, but I hope one day they will. I think one day they will. I do not subscribe to what John Campia said about the original trilogy. When Disney buys something, as my friend Cliff Stevenson pointed out, Disney buys it all. They don't buy it with any kind of caveat. If they buy Star Wars and they buy 20th Century Fox, they buy all of Star Wars and all of 20th Century Fox. And if they want to put out the original versions, I think they can. Yeah. Shazam Chavez. Okay, first of all, before Shazam Chavez says Space Rob is a cross between Morrissey and Chucky. That's the greatest thing ever. First of all, Shazam Chavez made a video that was following on the heels of what John Campy and I were saying about how we felt after we saw the Endgame trailer. And I believe Shazam, he used a clip of Philip Seymour Hoffman from Todd Solondz's movie Happiness. He tweeted it to me yesterday, and I was laughing about it, I swear to God, for 5 minutes. I watched it twice, and I couldn't stop laughing. So thank you for that. By the way, it's definitely NC-17, but you did tweet it, so it's in my feed. Shazam Chavez. It was great. Victor Acosta says Space Rob looks like he's been dipping into some of that the crazy white nose powder that was so popular in the 80s. No, man, Space Rob found something clearly different on an alien world that does that even better with less addictive qualities, I'm sure. Shalabeast says, how is the Imaginarium coming along? That is a good question. So in my garage, I have my library, and I was building out what was going to be the set for Robservations, the show Robservations, not these daily chats. But I am going to still be using that to shoot the openings of my Robservation show. But I found out that staying here in this room is easier to stream from for these live chats, because I don't have a hard internet line in there. I could put one in there, but it's too hot. It just gets too hot to do in there, broadcast in there. But I'm going to change the set. I'm going to put my Hot Toys. I'm going to move this so it's no longer diagonal, so I don't have to block the kitchen. But I'm going to put my glass cases behind me, and I'm going to fill them with Hot Toys, and I'll have some more light and just make it look a little bit more interesting, more like a set. And I've got my Wirecast software like John Campia has, so I'm going to really step up these chats from a technical standpoint. And I want to start bringing on guests. I mean, that's what I want to do. I've got a lot of friends that work in the industry. I might have people join me here live, but I'm going to have more guests and not just ramble on myself on the internet. So that is going to start changing relatively quickly, and you'll see that soon. And I still, a lot of you have become my Patreon supporters. By the way, I have a very brief video that I'm going to drop for my Patreon subscribers who you guys have been getting exclusive videos watching Priscilla, Queen of the Glacier, being built. I've got a final video. It's very, very short that I'm going to drop for Patreon subscribers to see what Priscilla looks like at the Emerald City Comic Con. And I'm going to start having more. What you doing, buddy? I'm going to start having more exclusive videos on my Patreon page. And also, I'm going to be doing some live chats and things on my Patreon page for Patreon subscribers. So thank you for those people who have been Patreon subscribers. Prepper James says, I have Laserdiscs of the original Star Wars trilogy. Not sure if my player still works. What good is physical media if you can't find any players to play them on? What happens in 30 years? That is a really interesting question. What will happen in 30 years? I mean, here's how I think about it. I think that in 30 years, physical media is going to be gone. There are always going to be people that hold on to their physical media, and there's always going to be people that can fix your machines. But I really do think physical media will be entirely gone because the world will have changed, irrevocably changed. And streaming I think all movies are going to, because once they're going to realize people will watch anything, and that eventually all of the humanities past, as far as media is concerned, as much of it as they can preserve, they're going to preserve it, because they're going to put it up there. They want. If you guys want to read a really interesting book about this subject, there's a book called The Long Tail, and it was written by, I believe, one of the editors of Wired magazine. And it talks about that very thing, and how, like, if you have an electronic jukebox or something that has 10,000, even 100,000 songs in it, eventually all the songs in it will be played. And that's sort of the long tail. It means that when something is new, its earning is here. And then as the years go by, it precipitously drops off, but then evens out and becomes part of this long tail of history where forever people are going to watch it and find it. Because I do believe that's something that will continue to go on. And read the book, The Long Tail. It's really interesting. But yes, physical media probably will go away eventually. Just because of convenience, and people aren't going to make it anymore. But I'm hoping that the byproduct of that is that all of these things will eventually be saved somewhere in the web and stored away on various. I mean, movies have been made digitally, unless you have separations where they make separations on celluloid, 3 different colors, to archive. Our digital legacy of movies that have been made in the last 20 years are in jeopardy. They might not be here in 100 years because they don't have any physical, there's nothing physical about them. So that's a little scary. Victor Acosta says, Rob, be honest, how stoked are you about becoming a video game character? That must be the dream of every nerd who grew up during the late 70s and 80s. Well, yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I didn't even instigate this. I call him Cousin Neil. His email address is Cousin Neil. He did, and he came to me. I think it's really cool. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the game has to be good. Now, I've watched and thrown my ideas out as he's been developing the game, and now it went from being sort of a lark of a game to being a real adventure game. And I've been sort of participatory in the development of it, and it's going to be interesting. I'm going to record voices for it. I'm even going to record Gilbert barking, so you'll get the traditional Gilbert bark in the game. And I think it's going to be fun. I mean, it's really fun to be a video game character and to be able to contribute, like, you know, to be able to say to Neil, I'm like, yeah, okay, so Space Rob has a ship called the Kubrick. I named it the Kubrick. I'm like, what if the ship transformed into a robot? Can that happen? And Neil comes back, and not only can it, but he sent me back a preliminary animation of watching the ship transform into a robot. And I was like, well, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen, you know, and it's like, ask and you shall receive. So it is pretty much it's a great thing to have. Sanity's Radical says, can't wait to play Rob's game. Sounds like a blast based on what he was telling us about it. Yeah, I hope it is. I'm supposed to get more, Neil sent me this great piece of, he's doing like a piece of, well, he's doing artwork, and he's doing these 4 pieces of art that come together as the first promo poster. And one of the pieces of artwork, it's long and thin, and you see the legs and the arms of the Kubrick in mecha form on the ground. And Space Rob and Gilbert the Gilberian are washing it. Space Rob has a hose, and Gilbert's being suspended by the suction device, polishing the ship. And I'm like, that's all I need to see. I thought that was cool. But yeah, I thought that was it's going to be fun to have a video game with with Gilbert the Gilberian. Let's see what people have to say. Pre-live teacher says, Rob, do you think Tasha Yar is a forerunner of Ronald D. Moore's version of Starbuck? You know, I don't know. Ronald Moore, of course, never worked on Starbuck, and on Tasha Yar until later. She died, obviously, in the first season, and Ron Moore didn't come on board until season 3. But I definitely think there is. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that. You know, when you bring back Starbuck, when you bring back Tasha Yar, that kind of character. You know, I think in Starbuck there's a lot. I think there's a little bit of Ellen Ripley in that. But yeah, I definitely think there's a little bit of that. I mean, yeah. Dave's Golden Duck says, I love Bollywood films. Yeah, when I watch Bollywood films, I find myself really loving them too. I really like, again, there's a certain there's a certain Bollywood movies have a whimsy to them. The fact that they break into song at any stretch of, or any moment. I really love that. I think that's great. Let's see. Everyone talking about James Gunn. I think it's great. I think that Jason McKibben says, read Pop at the Emerald City Comic Con is bad for the industry and nerd culture. Worse than Walmart. Oh, I don't know what Read Pop is bad for the culture, but if they're at the Emerald City Comic Con, that's interesting. I'll have to look into that. Wake Me Up When You Get There says a person who is a minority and a science fiction writer may have a better view on the struggles of an alien forced into an unfamiliar environment. I completely agree with that. I mean, people's various life experiences sort of obviously inform their fiction. And when people come from that perspective, they can bring more to the story of an alien, a fish out of water story. I totally agree with that. You know, that's why you talk about, that's why I think, for instance, Bryan Singer was able to bring something to the X-Men films back when comic book movies were just starting out. I mean, X-Men 1 really kicked us off with where we're at today, and the alienation people can feel, and the fact that people feel different and they feel trapped and they feel that they're not part of the culture that they're in. I mean, that's something that the X-Men films really hammered home, and it was definitely in the comics too. But that's what people, you know, everyone brings something new to the party. And when people can take their own experiences and sort of imbue those experiences into the fiction or the art that they're making, that's when you get the best kinds of storytelling. So I agree with that. Yeah. Sanity's Radical says, thank Breaking Bad for introducing me to that badass Chuck Norris of a man. I love that. I think that's great. Are you talking about Jonathan Banks? Yes, I'm sure you are. Yeah, if you watch Otherworld, Jonathan Banks, by the way, I first encountered Jonathan Banks. One of my favorite TV shows of all time is Wise Guy. Wise Guy was an 80s show. It starred Ken Wall as Vinny Terranova, and Jonathan Banks was his handler at OCB, the Organized Crime Bureau. And he went undercover, and it was a serialized show, and I loved it. And the first season with Kevin Spacey and Ray Sharkey and these extended long storylines is incredible. I loved Wise Guy, and that's the first time I saw here's something interesting. So Wise Guy had a story arc about Dead Dog Records. Literally, it was about the music industry. Glenn Frey was in the arc. It's not available on home video because they don't have the music licensing rights, and to get the music, it would be too expensive. So there are episodes of Wise Guy that have never been put on home video. They're unavailable because they didn't anticipate the home video industry would do what it did. They didn't think television would ever be used on the home video industry. So you can't get the Dead Dog Records episodes of Wise Guy, which really sucks. Writer BL Alley says, let's not forget James Gunn made it possible for Disney to rehire him because he acted with grace and professionalism. Absolutely true. James Gunn has been nothing if not professional. And I think, you know, I'm sure that Kevin Feige didn't want to get rid of him. It was a corporate decision that was ultimately, they saw that it was a mistake. And look, good on Disney and good on Marvel for rehiring him. I mean, they made a mistake. They acted accordingly. James Gunn acted like a professional. They rehired him, and all is right with the Guardians of the Galaxy universe. And once again, it just shows you what grace and good behavior can do, even if you've done something that isn't so good. And I'm not saying that James Gunn should apologize for his bad taste and his humor, because I've thoroughly enjoyed it over the years. But clearly, in our reactionary period of time, the forces of outrage and the forces of wokedom, I'm not saying we shouldn't be woke, but you know what? It's a continuum we live in. And the far left progressives are not doing anyone any favors by demanding some totalitarian view of the world that everyone has to adhere to what they believe. And that's true of the right wing as well. Brian Eng says, I wish Gunn would follow through on Adam Warlock, but he said it was just a throwaway scene. I don't know. I don't think you ever just throw away Adam Warlock. I think you can bring it back. Josh Crichton says, Rob, you check out Marvel Disney Kingdom. Rob, you check out Marvel Disney Kingdom run, they did Haunted Mansion, Enchanted Tiki Room, and Figment, which, by the way, your dream master and your imaginary dragon named Figment make those dreams happen. I'm not sure about that. I'm a little Josh, you're always sending me these funny things and I love them. Let's see. Yes, I agree. Learning Disabled Spock says, getting through the insularity of the internet that allows people to ironically never leave their safe space when we have access to the most variety will be one of the toughest social tests we'll have. I agree with that. Look, I think I encourage everyone to get a passport and go travel somewhere you've never been before. There's not a better learning experience. And don't join some travel agency or something. Just go travel and figure out your own itinerary and go meet the people and go enjoy yourself. Nothing is more eye-opening than that. So yes, I agree with you. Shazam Chavez says, who's the main villain of the game? Space Alec? No, Space Alec is not the villain of the game. Space Alec needs to just make his movie. That's what I think Alec needs to do, is go make his film, because we all want to see it. I want to see it. Dieter Bastian says, if I remember correctly, you said some time ago that you were a Kiss fan. Detroit Rock City is getting 20 years old, one of my favorite road movies with your most wanted girlfriend, Natasha Lyonne. Well, I'm a huge fan of Detroit Rock City. It's very funny because Free Enterprise is 20 years old as well. And I had to actually go talk to Gene Simmons to allow him. I had to ask him to let us use the Kiss jacket of Dean Simmons. That's Dean Simmons. Did I say Dean Simmons? Gene Simmons. We have Gene Simmons' jacket in the movie. And we had to have that, and Gene Simmons had to approve that we could use the McFarlane Kiss action figures that they had put out at the time. And he was really cool. And the first rock concert I ever went to was the Kiss Destroyer Tour in 1979. I went with Jeff Swafford and Pam Comstock. And I liked Detroit Rock City a great deal. I mean, it was a lot of fun. And I don't think you can grow up as a fan of horror movies and not like Kiss. I mean, it was kind of you had to like Kiss because you had Gene Simmons as the spaceman. Gene Simmons is Ace Frehley is the spaceman. Gene Simmons is the monster. Paul Stanley is the star child, and Peter Criss was like the giant cat. And you can't not love Kiss. You just can't. And I think as a genre fan, you have to love. And plus, back when I was back in the New York groove, Ace Frehley's the song off his solo album. It's you gotta love all that stuff. You can't not love Kiss, I don't think. Let's see. Danny Pearson says, hi Al, hi Rob. I'm working on my music engraving of 2 national anthems, that of New Zealand in remembrance of the Christchurch incident and that of the Republic of Ireland in anticipation of St. Patrick's Day. I'm giving both anthems a mock-up cover treatment as well. Well, that's pretty cool. What do you think about that, Gilbert? Gilbert just keeps coming and going. But that's very cool. Send me a picture. I want to see what those are so I can know what they are. Haskell 420 says, I sent in a $5 super chat for the 2:20 p.m. show. Said, hey, Rob, what a week. Captain Marvel kicking your ass, Endgame trailer, and now Gunn's back. What a week for a good fandom. I agree. Haskell 420, first of all, Haskell, you're very supportive of both my show and John Campy's show on Twitter. You're always retweeting the show and retweeting the links. So I thank you very much for that. Thank you for the continued support. It's great, again, having the members of the Post-Geek Singularity community who are being supportive of not just me, but you guys are all supportive of each other here. And I think that's really, really, really cool. So I think that's great. Stubble McShave asks, by the way, Stubble, I missed a super chat of yours, I think. So I apologize for that. Have you read the Dresden Files books or graphic novels? No, I have not read the Dresden Files books. I'm aware of them. I didn't see the show either. But I would like to. Those are right up my alley. I mean, I love those kinds of books. Willow Yang says, can you die in space, Rob? If so, I apologize in advance for killing you a million times. Not on purpose, of course. I suck at most games. I hope I get reborn. I honestly don't know. I don't yet know. I need to see the gang. Oh, Vesna's here. Vesna's here, and she came in. I was wondering where Vesna is. She says, "Hi, everybody. I just got back from the theater watching Captain Marvel, and the first thing I saw, James Gunn is back. Great news. Thank you to our savior, Kevin Feige, and Emperor Bob Iger for it, and to you too, Robert." Well, Vesta, that's cool because it would be night in Bosnia right now, so you would go to the theater. How are the theaters in? Do you guys have big movie theaters? Like, do you have giant screen theaters with big sound systems? And are there IMAX theaters there? I'd be curious. What is the theater experience like in Bosnia? I was surprised when I went to Sofia how good the movie theaters there were. I thought I was prejudicial against Bulgarians and their movie going experiences when I went to Bulgaria. I'm like, I bet it's going to be some shithole soda stick theater. Couldn't be further from the truth. They had these beautiful theaters. The projection was great. I really enjoyed going to the theaters there. The popcorn was really good too. And I was wrong. See, my preconceived notions about a different culture were wrong. Now, I'm not saying every movie theater. I was in the capital of Bulgaria. But I was saying that, I'm saying that I was surprised by that. I thought that was pretty cool that I had my attitude changed. Prepper James says physical media doesn't last forever. Disc or not, or disc rot destroys discs as time goes by. Nothing is forever. Look, I agree, but you know what? I have to tell you, I have CDs that I bought in the early 80s that work just fine. And whether it's disc rot or not, I don't know how long those will last because obviously plastic does change color and plastic ages. The reason that laser discs had what was called laser rot on them is that laser discs were actually glued together. And what happened would be that the glue would sometimes release or air would be trapped in the disc. And literally the aluminum, the disc would rust. And that's what caused laser rot because it's those discs are just pits basically in a piece of metal. So, but yeah, nothing is forever. But unfortunately, and not unfortunately, I guess, but and so much of our history. I mean, look, how many hundred? You go back 100 years. How much of our history is there? I mean, think about it. Think about 100 years ago. There wasn't the kind of pop culture media that we have today. There's a lot more of it. There's just things that didn't exist before. Television being one of them. Comic books being another. CDs, all of that. Recorded music didn't exist. And all of that is a function of the last basically 100, 150 years. Photographic science, when did that come about? The 1850s or something? So all of this, we don't know how long it's going to last. I mean, look at the Colosseum. The Colosseum's how many? 2,000 years old? 2,400 or something? And it's falling apart. Like nothing is going to last. And eventually the sun is going to go nova, or it's going to turn into a red giant and swallow everything up anyway. But it'd be nice to preserve our media history for at least another 300 or 400 years, because that would be kind of neat. I don't want to see it go away. I don't think any of you do too. I want it to stick around. Celadon Sound says broadcast on all known frequencies and in all known languages, including Welsh. Yes, sir. I agree. Stubble McShave says, Rob, I think you'd like the Dresden Files. He's a massive geek. A lot of fun when he gives Star Wars references and the demon he's talking wonders what he's talking about. That's funny. Let's see. Yeah, Rob reads my posts and I've never done Super Chat. Yeah, look, Super Chats are, I won't lie to you. Super Chats keep me going and keep this going on, because otherwise I couldn't do it. I'd have to go do something else. So I appreciate all the support we get all over the place. And, this is the 65th live chat I've done. And I wouldn't have kept doing it if I didn't have you guys as the Post-Geek Singularity community being here and participating, because why bother? But I like having this community. And I like, now that I'm going to start going out and meeting people and really stepping up the channel, now that I've built sort of a base to work from, and I'm getting, look, it's really important everybody subscribes, and it's important that people share this channel, because the more people that you get in, the more you're able to do this. Like, I never thought I'd be a professional YouTuber. I mean, I'm still working on other stuff, but working like this and having a community and being able to get that support, like, I can step up the equipment. Like, I use some of this money, some of the Super Chat money that people have been giving me to buy new equipment, like this right here. which is a Wirecast device, which is going to allow me to do more lower thirds and bring people in, which John Campia told me about. So you're going to start seeing the results of that being put into this channel, because the way YouTube works, you don't get money right away. They collect it and send it to you, so you have to wait. But I'm slowly building up more of an infrastructure, and I want to make this more interesting and bring my guests and people I know that you guys would love to hear from and have long form conversations. I mean, if I could emulate anyone, whether you like their politics or not, I mean, I look at people like Joe Rogan and Dave. I'm trying to think of Dave's last name. I'm drawing a blank. Dave Rubin. Joe Rogan and Dave Rubin. Now, whether you like their politics or not, what I really love about their shows is they do these long form conversations with people, deep dives into subjects, and that's what I want to be able to do here, and be able to have a guest on, and we can talk and really have these in-depth discussions that the only place you can have them is YouTube. So I think that's what's great, and I want to be able to do that, and I want to be able to bring people on the show and really be able to just get into it. Just get into it. You know, he's one of my favorite YouTubers, and really turn it into something, because that's what we're doing, really. I read another interesting article that I was going to share that was on Quillette, that talked about on Joe Rogan's show. They had Tim Pool had Joe Rogan on, and they had the head of Twitter, the founder of Twitter, and his chief executive officer, and they grilled him for like 3 hours. And this Quillette article, was talking about how, you'd never see that, how our media, whether it's CNN, they've all gone the soundbite route. So you seldom have really long form discussions. I mean, you go back and you watch videos of talk shows like the Dick Cavett show or Mike Douglas or these talk shows from the 60s and 70s. People were on for a lot longer, and you got much more of a sense of who they were as people. And I think that's what this YouTube space has provided, that is not provided anywhere else, is a venue where we can have these long conversations and talk about this stuff, which is a great thing. And that's what these chats for me are allow me to do, where I couldn't do that anywhere else. And I really want to up my game and make these chats much more vibrant and much more inclusive, and have, I'd be even curious to have fans come on, even some of you, like have them over here. If there's people from out of California or people from another country that have been here, and you come to the United States or something, it'd be interesting to have one of you come on and talk about what is fandom like for you in your home country, whether it's Ireland or Bosnia or New Zealand or wherever, India. That would be an interesting conversation to have. And maybe if you're not here in California, we could set that up. Like, I'd be curious to maybe, for a number of you regulars, I want to figure out how I can do this, but maybe have a Google Hangout where we can have like 5 of you in, and we can do a long form conversation, and you can tell me your stories of fandom growing up where you are. I mean, I'd love to do something along those lines. And I really, once Tango Shalom is done, and once I don't have so much other work to do, I think it'd be really interesting to do that kind of thing, which I think would be great. Adam Gross says, I would love it if you would get filmmakers and comic book writers and artists on your channel for a long chat. I'd love to do that. You know what's really interesting? I learned this when I was at Collider. When we had industry professionals on our shows, like on Collider Heroes, they were some of our lowest rated shows. And we often wondered, well, why is that? And I think that one of the things that like you and I having these conversations, and all of you that are here, I think that a lot of people are relatively intimidated, or they feel that real professionals might not have the sort of rapport that we all have as fans, because I am not just a filmmaking professional, but I'm also a big geek, and I've been a big geek before I was ever a filmmaking professional. I think that comes off. So, when I'm having these chats, it's like, hey, we could be sitting in a bar having a beer, and I wouldn't be necessarily intimidating to somebody. If I made a movie that suddenly made $100 million and I was doing these chats, I think you guys might look at me differently. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I think Kevin Smith has done a good job of cultivating his audience, because, he still makes his movies, but he's an approachable guy. He always has been. And I would be the same. If I had any great commercial success, I'm still going to be this same dude. I'm still going to be excited about the fact that a Thanos figure is going to show up at my doorstep one day. And I think that's what I at least have to offer that's different. This geek perspective, but I'm also working in the business. David Cabrera says, I like the Kevin Smith format. You should have your show live somewhere if you can. Yeah, I mean, I've often thought about that. Like I was thinking about at this Wenatchee show, maybe I'll do a live Robservations show. But the problem is if you're going to do a live show, which I would love to do, I would love to do a live show that I'm also streaming, but you need multiple cameras. It just requires a lot of technical stuff to keep it going. And that's something that I could do. And I think that would be interesting. Adam Gross also says, I did send a message to Joe Rogan about getting some artists on his show, but I never heard back. Not sure art and creativity is his bag. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, but I think he's more interested in political figures and that kind of thing. But I think he would have it if he found somebody that he thought was really interested. He would have them on there that he was interested in. Because there's a lot of writers and artists that are very political that I think would be good. Olenti says, it's great. You have these intimate chats now. It'll be harder to do once you have fans in the hundreds of thousands. God willing, I should have fans in the hundreds of thousands. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I was walking down the street in Burbank earlier in the week, and some guy was just walking down the street on the sidewalk the other day. He's like, hey, man, or hey, Rob, big fan. He's with his girlfriend. And it's such a funny thing to me because like I've worked in the business and in the geek circles, people recognize me at conventions and stuff, but to get recognized on the street, and my girlfriend's been with me, I got recognized at a Coldplay concert. Once I was recognized with her at the Cheesecake Factory. It's funny because I don't think of, like, we just do work, like I don't think about being a celebrity because I've been interested in the same stuff I've been interested in all the time, like my whole life, and being able to talk about it with you guys is it's a privilege. It's a joy and it's a privilege. So that's why I do it. The sport's great too, but it's fun to be able to geek out and talk about this stuff. But yeah. And I really have liked getting all these letters. I mean, I'm trying to, because I always read a lot of stuff and I like sharing different links and things like that. But yeah, it's great having this community and having you guys all here. Dax Jacobson says, walking outside in Burbank on a sidewalk. Yes, I was doing a lot of wandering around Burbank the other day. Basically killing time. I was either sitting in various pubs, I was sitting in a movie theater, or I was just wandering around Burbank. But yeah, that's kind of what I was doing. It was interesting. I'll tell you what's really funny. So I was sitting, I think it was called the Story Pub. I'd never been in there. It was like an Irish bar in Burbank. And I just started talking to these two guys, and it turns out we had a lot of mutual friends. I'd never met this guy before. He's a screenwriter. We had a lot of mutual friends. We just started talking, and as I said, I never met him. He DMs me the other day, and he didn't know, like, I was just sitting there talking. He didn't know who I am. And when you meet strange people, you don't sit there and go, well, my name is blah, 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 and this is what I've done, and list your resume. Like, you don't do that. We're just having a conversation. He DMs me on Twitter, and he's telling me that he's listening to the audiobook of my friend Mark Altman's The 50-Year Mission and heard me mentioned. It just shows you the continuum that we all live in. When you broaden your horizons, you just don't know what's going to happen. So that was kind of fun. And in a bar I'd never been in, I went in and I was eating their hamburger, and these guys just sat down next to me. We strike up a conversation, and it was fun. All right. Well, listen, I'm kind of rambling now. It's been a good chat. Good Friday. I'll be back tomorrow. Maybe things will look different on my background. Although I'll kind of miss seeing being flanked by the Enterprises, because I imagine them Star Trek 6 style blasting my head open. I'm going to change that, though. So this is going to be the end of this chat today. It's been a great day as far as genre filmmaking is concerned, with James Gunn coming back to Guardians of the Galaxy to finish off his, hopefully, trilogy. Maybe it'll be more. I don't know. But maybe Gamora will come back. Who knows what's going to happen post-Endgame. What a week in genre material we've had this week. There's been so much good stuff. I appreciate all of your support. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate all of you, the members of the Post-Geek Singularity community, all of you imagination connoisseurs with your refined tastes is always a good thing. And let's all take a moment and think about what happened to the people in New Zealand, and think about the fact that we really need to get rid of, look, the less hatred, the less terrorism, the less acrimony we have, that's more people who have time to think about and imagine more cool things that we're going to love. Science fiction, fantasy, horror, novels, comics, toys, whatever. The people that aren't thinking about those things could be, if they were better taken care of, and if everybody was more mindful of one another. So anyway, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell you have not heard. All you have to do is listen. And with that, I will say good day and have a better day.